Tankers, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you are here for just a good time. I am personally here for a good time, and today we're going to be making a tier list of all of the tier 10 vehicles in the game that I currently have. I will be ranking them of OP, comp, good, okay, and trash. And I will be putting these according to my experience playing the vehicles, kind of saying what I think they could be, as well as I just said, the experience. I'll be going by light tanks, mediums, heavies, and tank destroyers today. First off, we have the Bat Chat. The Bat Chat. It's been a pretty good tank for me. I feel like I'd say it's comp for just a few things, because you can get a very nice clip, it's sneaky, it's fast, you can aid your teammates, but I think the overall experience of playing the Bat Chat actually makes it drop down to the good profile, just because sometimes it does get caught off guard, and it can't help itself sometimes with that reload clip if it gets gangbanged by heavier mediums or other light tanks. The next up is the Sheridan. That's another good tank. Competitive. I feel like the Sheridan can be more competitive than the Bat Chat at times, just because it's nice to be able to deal out that 600 plus alpha. But overall, I think it is overall just a good, decent overall tank. I definitely will say it is going to be more like in between the comp and good, higher up than the Bat Chat, depending on the situation. Yes, I know the Sheridan missile isn't in the regular game modes, but I'll be talking about what it was before it was just made for game modes. Before it was made for game modes, it was completely overpowered. Yeah, we're able to control missiles and auto-lock on tanks behind hills and be completely safe. This allowed players to just rack up damage, kill tanks behind cover, and get some awesome, pretty crazy shots, which made it very fun to play, and overpowered if you knew how to use the mechanic. But nowadays, just because it's in-game events, I would say I'd say it's an okay vehicle nowadays, just because you can't really auto-lock the missiles anymore, which kind of takes away the fun of being able to completely annihilate someone behind a hill. But you can still do that, you're just not as accurate, so it's okay. The LT100, I'm gonna put it up here. It's, compared to any of the other light tanks, and my experience playing this guy, it's gonna be competitive to almost overpowered. When it first came out, I'd say that was when it was more OP than anything, and then they nerfed it, and then they recently buffed it again, and it's still fairly good. I feel like this tank is used a lot more in competitive scene for light tanks than most of the others, and it does a well job. It's kind of like a Dracula in a way for playstyle, in my comparison from experience at tier 10. The Vickers Light, it was here when it first came out. This thing was broken. It has good HE, it had good gold ammo, it had good standard pen, and it had a very good turret. It was able to get around, it has good gun depression. It was just disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And then they nerfed it, and it went to comp slash kind of good, and then they nerfed it again recently to making it a Hesh gun, which, yeah, if you can flank and stay behind vehicles, it stays up into the good, maybe into the competitive side. But that's not always the case with the Vickers Light. A lot of people like to just chase this tank compared to all the other tanks. So right now, I'm honestly going to move the Vickers down to the trash location because of that Hesh gun. I think the Vickers should have two separate guns, the old gun and the Hesh gun, depending on what the player wants to experience. The next guy is the WZ-132-1. This tank has just been good and okay. Overall, my experience, I have enjoyed the tank, its ability to be able to know if people are in its view sight and if it's going to be spotted or not, is very nice and can make it competitive, but I do not see this vehicle ever getting up to here. It's more down in the good area if you're a pretty good light tank player, but overall, I'm going to say it's an okay light tank. And with the M48 patent, which has received a buff in multiple forms, and you do see it a little bit more often now than what it used to be. I think the tank has just been good overall / okay. It's kind of just been in there, and it's been comp a few times. Now, with the reactive armor on the vehicle, I'm going to put it in the good category. It can be played very aggressively. It has a decent gun and an alright turret. The next thing is the M60, a very similar tank to the M48 patent, but has a smaller weak spot on the turret, which makes it more competitive than the patent, but I don't think the M60 is fully made for comp. It does, in my opinion, have a better gun and an armor profile than the patent, so I am going to have to put it in the good platform, and it is definitely going to be better than the regular patent, but the patent can still be quite good. But I don't want two very similar vehicles like this in the same category, so I'm going to drop the patent down to kind of just okay compared to the M60. The next vehicle is the E50M. Uh, 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 this tank's kind of been all over for me. It's been down to here to up to here to over here, there, and there. I'm gonna say it's competitive, very competitive tank right now. Having reactive as a E50M, you activate that, ram somebody, you get around the battlefield, you have armor, you have a decent gun. Sometimes that gun can be trolled, but I'd say the E50M is quite competitive when you play it correctly. The next tank is the Leopard 1. I think the Leopard 1 can be competitive, especially with the abilities that it does have with, what is it, reticle calibrator? Whatever the aiming thing is. Making it have a smaller aim circle makes it pretty good at sniping, but I feel like there are better tanks than the Leopard 1 and just the play style that I do enjoy. So I'm going to put this guy down in the good section, but it can be quite competitive for a player who enjoys the tank and is very good at it. The KPZ-50T, it's kind of the in-between of the E50 and the Leopard 1. This guy does have tungsten, which makes it pretty deadly, especially when you drop that down with adrenaline, making it have a very high DPM for those 20 seconds or whatever it is. And it has a decent armor profile, quite troll, and an enjoyable tank. It gets around. I'm going to put it as in the good area. It's definitely going to be closer to the comp side, but it definitely won't be used in the competitive scene. Alright, the FV. It used to be here, and I think it's just slowly gone downhill. Yeah, I think it's just slowly been going downhill. I'm gonna put it in the okay section, depending on which gun you're using and your play style. But it's definitely used to be better. Definitely used to be better. Alright, this vehicle has been up here, up there, up here, up there, down here, then here. I still think this vehicle can be quite competitive, just because of the abilities it used to have. Back in the old days, it was a lot more competitive when it had reactive and the speed boost, which was just disgusting. Being able to brawl and get around very quickly to positions was fantastic. Now, in my personal experience, I think it's just a meh kind of tank. It's good, but I just don't want to take it out very often. So I'm going to put it personally in the good area, but it could be competitive. Oh boy, the WZ-121, the regular boy. Yeah, it's going to be competitive. It's quite competitive, in my opinion, just because you have a big, derpy medium tank that has tungsten and a quick reload makes this thing quite nasty and disgusting. If you know how to use its gun depression and work with your team, you can farm up some nasty wins. The next thing, the Project Murat. I don't know why people are not playing this vehicle, but in my personal opinion, it's overpowered in some ways. Otherwise, it's not. But I just love this tank. It's a Barask at tier 10. I don't know why people aren't playing it. I don't. Maybe people don't like it, but I personally think this tank is overpowered in a lot of ways. If it's not overpowered, it's going to be competitive. Very competitive. It's only because of its size do I think the reason why it's not in the tournaments currently. Or at least I haven't watched it be used currently. But I personally am going to put that in the overpowered section. The AMX-30B, the next tank, it would be, in my opinion, very comparable to the Leopard 1. Almost, maybe even better in some situations, having a little bit better armor. But because of that weak spot, it's trash. It's just trash, in my opinion. It's just trash. Otherwise, everything is fantastic about the tank. It would be a good tank, but that weak spot is just horrible. And you can't really actually use what the tank could be used for. The Caro. This tank is quite disgusting. I personally don't enjoy it the most, but it can be competitive and it can be good. I'm going to put it in the good area because it tends to fluctuate. The Caro just seems not as consistent as other Italian vehicles and mediums within its playstyle. I'm going to do the Progresso 65 next. It's an okay vehicle. It can be good. When it first came out, I would say it was competitive to almost overpowered. But now it's just kind of there. It can be good at times in the right scenario and with a decent player. But right now, just for the average player, I think the Prog is just there. Its cheeks and armor profile are just pennable beyond pennable. But it does have a nasty clip if you do get clipped by it. The Lion, it's competitive. It's competitive. It's great. Uh, I love it. I definitely think it's a lot more effective and has a better pattern than the Caro does with being effective. The CS-63, I personally have not played this tank very much. I think I've maybe played it 3, 4, 5 times. And I've kind of just have a middle ground with this tank. But I also just don't think there's nothing too special about it. But it does have tungsten and that reticle ability, which makes it quite nasty. So depending on how you set it up, it can be good or just okay. Me personally, I'm going to put it in the good section. The TVP, out of all the autoloaders in the game, I absolutely hate the TVP. It is fun when you're in a platoon and you both are running the TVP and just clip someone out. But playing it by myself, I absolutely hate this vehicle. I would put it in a good to competitive side for most players, and even okay players, it's going to be a good to okay tank. But for me personally, I think it's just trash. And I know a lot of people are going to say something like, oh, skill level. But that's just my personal opinion. I have a bit over 60% in the TVP. I just personally don't enjoy it. I'd rather play the Lion, the Caro, or the Prague. The STB, for me, I'm going to put it in competitive. Uh, Before they made its hatch a bit bigger, it seems like they made the hatch a bit bigger. It used to be up here for me, and now it's down here. It is a very fun medium tank, having good gun depression, a good turret, good alpha, good standard, and premium pen. And it gets around the battlefield. It's quite sneaky as well. It's definitely a recommendation for anyone who wants to mess around with people. The 140. It used to be overpowered to competitive. Now I'm just going to put it in the trash section because it's probably one of the harder vehicles to actually even get an ace tanker in, because it just, everything can pen it now. Its turret is just unreliable, its hull is unreliable, but it has a very good gun. Which the gun, I love the gun, which I would put the gun up to competitive or good area, but just the tank overall, with its armor and kind of the experience playing this vehicle, I'm going to be putting it in the trash section. The T62A, I love this vehicle, but it's kind of like the 140 situation where they just kind of nerfed it to the ground. I prefer the 140's gun over the 62's gun, but the armor profile is a bit better on the 62, so I am going to be putting it towards the more okay section. The T22, a lot of people are going to say it's overpowered, a lot of people are going to say it's comp, good, and some people are going to say it's okay, and some people are going to say it's trash. My personal opinion, it was here, then all of a sudden went down to here just because of my experience of playing with teams got really bad, and I was like, oh man, this tank is just crap all of a sudden. But overall, I think this is a good vehicle. It is very nice now with the tungsten. I just personally, for some reason, don't enjoy the 22 that much, but it is fun to take out every once in a while and have a fun game. The 907. Definitely I enjoy this the most out of all the Soviet mediums. I'm going to be putting him in the competitive side, where he does have a few abilities that make the tank quite effective. It has decent armor, has decent turret, and a pretty good gun, making it quite competitive, and definitely one of my favorite mediums as a collector, but that has been kind of taken by the Lion recently. Anyways, those are the medium tanks. Let's head over to the heavies. Alright, we're going to be starting off with the 60 TP for the heavy tanks. It's a competitive tank. It has decent armor, kind of a troll armor profile, but when you do angle it wrong, people are just going to be able to pen that side quite easily. But it has a very nasty gun with tungsten, it has good HE, it gets around the battlefield, and it has a nice amount of gun depression for how nice the turret actually is. So it's going to be competitive, and I think it's going to stay competitive for as long as it's in the game. The 113. This tank has been in the game for quite some time, and I think it's a very fun tank. It used to be competitive, then it went to good, and now it's kind of just okay. I personally do like the armor profile, I do like the gun, I do like the speed, but it just seems to just not perform the way you think it would perform. And that's why I'm going to just kind of just put it in the okay spot. Alright, this tank, the BZ-75, a lot of people are going to say it's okay, a lot of people are going to say it's OP. I'm going to put it as OP if you play it correctly, set it up correctly, and use the correct ammunition. I do have a video on this vehicle. Go check it out and try it with that setup. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And if it's not going to be overpowered, it could be competitive. But its gun is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And yeah, I think it's a very underrated tank that a lot of people aren't playing very often, or you see them playing it, but they're using the other gun instead of the derp gun. That derp gun's disgusting, guys. Check out that video. The 5A, I love the gun, I love the speed, I prefer the 113's armor over this guy, but I think it performs better than the 113 overall, just because it feels like it just gets more done. But it's definitely pretty close to the 113. The 113's closer to that good section, but it's okay. This guy is closer to the okay, but still in the good section. The 114. You want an E100 that's a premium in a different nation? Here's the tank. I think this tank could be competitive, but it does have some pretty obvious flat areas that are easily pennable, where the 60 TP is just going to take over that role a lot better. But it does have reactive, which does help it stand out a little bit longer. So it is an iffy thing. I think the 114 could be quite competitive in the right scenario on the right map. I'm gonna put it there. I'm gonna put it there. I'm pretty dang proud of that. The 116. Um. It's okay. It can be trash. It can be good, and it's okay. It's between both of those. It's just there. It's just there. That's what. It's just there. That's what it is. The Type 71. I think this tank is still competitive. It has great armor, even though it has received a little bit of a nerf. I still think it's very reasonable for a basic player or an average player and a good player and a really good player will enjoy this tank and do very well in it. It's a troll tank. It has a decent gun, and if you make pushes with it and time it with your teammates, dang, this thing it's like a mouse with speed at times. Just don't be careful with the weak spots. That's all I gotta say. The VC-55, it's not comp, but it's good, but it's not good, and it can be comp. I'm gonna put it in the good section because it can go back and forth. I feel like the tank, the 2-shot is very nice. Being able to dish out that damage and slapping kids around with it is very nice. But because of that, people now, I feel like, aren't afraid to push it because it has a longer reload. When it had the single shot, you just slap them for that 500-ish damage, and they wouldn't push you. They wouldn't push you. And so I feel like the 1-shot was actually a better meta than the 2-shot. I would say the 1-shot was more comp than the 2-shot. But it also depends on your experience with the vehicle. I personally would say I get pushed a lot more with the 2-shot than the 1-shot. The Kranvong, it's competitive. I wouldn't say it's completely overpowered. I'm going to put it in the OP section. You get this thing hold down in a nasty area, and there's no tanks to really challenge you with premium ammunition on that turret. You're just gonna farm everyone in your sight. That's what's gonna happen. The only time where it drops down to just good is when you push them and they're kind of just exposed. The only time it's trash or okay is when you use the clip incorrectly. If you play this tank correctly, it's competitive and OP. The STRVK, it used to be overpowered, having a good rate of fire, having the speed beyond speeds, and it was comp, and now it's kind of just good. You still can get around. It's been nerfed a little bit, but it's okay. They gave it the stabilization ability like the VZ, which I don't think it needed that because it's already accurate enough. The AMX-50B, it's a good tank. It has a nice clip potential. It does have reactive armor now, which allows you to be able to effectively make a push a lot more effectively and see if you can stay alive longer. It's definitely better if it's coordinated with a teammate or the team to be able to make a push and dump out that damage. Otherwise, playing by yourself, I'm going to say it's just an okay tank that has a good clip potential. So we're going to put it down in the okay section. The AMX, we're going to put it to the good/competitive side. I know Trianos really enjoys this tank, especially when it came out and it was disgusting and they buffed it a little and then they nerfed it and it kind of just went down, and then they recently buffed it with reactive. I think the vehicle is a good tank. It has a very nasty gun. It has a good frontal armor, and if you can hide the weak spots, you're going to be farming people like crazy, which will make it competitive. Now, when people do get around you, it's just kind of okay. Yep, here we go. This tank's absolutely trash. Back in the good old days, it was a lot better, but I think this tank needs a lot of help. Alright, next tank. Yep, trash as well. They made a tank that was good to competitive or slash okay to it's absolutely trash. It's just kind of the same thing with the Vickers. They ruined it by making it a Hesh gun. And having a heavy tank that kind of struggles versus super heavies already with its regular pen doesn't really help when it only has Hesh. The Super Conquer, with reactive now, it's pretty competitive. Actually, it was already competitive. It might be even OP, but I'm gonna put it in the competitive section just because it's you know what? You know what? I'm gonna put it in the overpowered section. If it's played right, it's completely overpowered and all that jazz. The Renaissance Ray, I've hardly played very few games with this guy. I'm gonna put him in the good section. I've had some bad experiences with it, and I've had some really good experiences with it. So I can't really say fully, but it definitely is kind of just there, in my opinion. But it does have a nice gun. IS-4. It used to be competitive all for a very long time, and then it went to just okay. I think since it got buffed, it's going to be in that good to comp range. I'm going to put it into the good section for now because I personally haven't really tested the IS-4 with its new abilities, except for recently in game modes, and it gets around with that speed boost and having a better DPM. I think this guy could return to comp. IS-7 with tungsten. Uh, uh, it's a good tank. I think it has its flaws. It has its pros. I think it's an overall just good tank, and it's good. Yeah. The Object 260. It's kind of like the IS-7, but I would rather play the IS-7 with tungsten than this guy. I'm going to put him down in the trash section, in my personal opinion. A lot of other players are going to be putting him higher up towards these middle sections. I just personally don't like the 260. I get ammo racked almost every single game. Or if I don't get fully ammo racked, the ammo is always damaged, unlike my IS-7. So that's why I'm going to put him there. The 7.7, it's competitive / good. I'm going to put it in the good section just because it's kind of like the IS-4, IS-7 mix, where it does both their roles. It's fast, it's armored, and in the hands of a good player and a competitive player, it's going to be very competitive. In an average player, it's going to be good. And the 7.7, I've had pros and cons a lot with it. The E5, ever since they removed that hatch and it's been up and down, I'm going to put it in the competitive section. It's basically the Super Conqueror if you don't have the Super Conqueror. It has a nice boat-shaped hull, which can be very troll for people who don't know how to aim properly. And I know they took away some of its abilities, like reactive and all these other things, but it's still a good tank. It's very fun to just sit there on a ridgeline and let people have fun trying to pen a turret that's disgustingly hard to pen. The T-57. Ooh, this is interesting. Very interesting. T-57. I'm gonna put him in the good section. I don't feel like it's too bad. I don't feel like it's too competitive. I feel like this tank is perfect for an autoloader. I think it's perfect. Yeah, I think it's perfect. The Yo. My personal experience, I'm going to put it in the good section, but it's definitely better than the 57, in my personal opinion, which makes it competitive. The 1B, it's going to be competitive automatically. This tank has just been good since it came out, and now that it can back up while it's tracked is disgusting. It's disgusting because you can still play hold down while you're backing up and shoot someone because of how good the DPM is, and the turret is just disgusting. If someone overexposes their hull, well, that's your problem. And that's probably why you think it's trash, because you don't know how to play hold down. E6. I would put it as a good tank, but my personal experience playing this thing is just horrible. My teams with this is one of those tanks where I just get horrible teams every time, and they all die within a minute. And I just never can really test this tank's abilities. So it's just trash in my opinion. Otherwise, it's good. Now, in a competitive setting with tournaments, this tank is basically the STRV nowadays, and can make some amazing pushes in certain maps, like Canal. Otherwise, by myself or in pubs, I think this tank is just trash. The mouse. I really don't enjoy the mouse, but I do think it can be effective in just blocking damage. I think it was a lot better back then. I'm going to put it in the okay section. It's kind of just there for me. I'd rather go play other German heavies. The E100, I'm going to be putting this in the good to competitive section. I enjoy the E100. If you learn how to angle that turret and to deal with others, and you can pen your shots, use the correct ammunition to pen your targets, this tank just racks up damage and absorbs shells. Very fun tank. If you don't like the E100, you should try the VK72. The VK72 is comp for me to almost overpowered. Great gun, very similar to the E100's gun. It can side scrape, it can do this weird pokey thing with its frontal armor. Its turret is pretty nasty if you can hide the whole of your tank, but there are some very weird weak spots that you can get on top of that with HE. Same thing with the 60. Very hard to pen though, very hard to hit it. But if you do, I've rolled for 1,000 plus each time. VK90. It used to be good, and now I think it's competitive. The VK90 with its abilities now is disgusting. I don't play it very often, but this thing, playing in the right spot, playing hold down, using gun depression over its side, where it's hiding its hole, is disgusting. It is disgusting, and it has that ability where it has the aiming device. It's disgusting as hell. Disgusting. So yep, there's my tier 10 list for y'all. Let's head on to the tank destroyers. Alright, tank destroyers, starting off with the 1A3. It's okay. It's fun if you can actually pan or your shell flies straight and does damage. Other than that, it's just there, in my opinion. This guy, it's not overpowered, but it's competitive. It's competitive if you set it up right and you play it right. And be aware of your surroundings and the situation going on. Otherwise, it's going to be an okay tank for an okay player. To a good player, it can be a competitive tank. The Badger. I'm going to put it in the good area just because it can fluctuate up to competitive. It's definitely on the higher end of the good category. It would be like here, if I could put it there. But it's nasty if you get it in the good position and you have someone supporting you, or you're supporting someone, and you just farm. You just farm. The Foch. Back in the old days, when it first came out, it was there. It was there. And then it just slowly dropped to here. And they recently gave us some abilities where it has tungsten and the speed boost, which makes it a good tank, and it can be competitive. But my personal experience playing this tank recently and the past few months to a year, I personally just don't enjoy it anymore. I don't know what it is, but man, it used to be here, and then all of a sudden it just kind of just showed up in the okay area, right? A lot of people are going to hate me about this on the Ho-Ri. I think it's trash. Absolutely trash. It's kind of like my experience with the E6. My teams are beyond horrible, and it just struggles. Just struggles. But I know it can definitely be up to here to here. Definitely could be up to here. But because of teams and my experience playing that, yikes. Alright, Minotauro. Needs no explanation. We're going to move on to the next tank. Yep, GG's, guys. Have fun facing one of those. If you don't know how to face it, well, you can click the exit button or close the app. Because I'm slapping you around with my Minnow. The next tank. This thing used to be right here until they nerfed it. And what's a funny story about this tank, I used to say it was overpowered and would be used in comp, but no one believed me. And then when I took my year break from the game, guess what tank was being used very actively in competitive tanks and tournaments? This guy. Wow. Wow. Just because other people say this is meta doesn't mean those tanks are meta anymore. Y'all should try out tanks sooner before everyone goes, yeah, that's meta now. That's meta. Yep. In order to win sometimes and beat the bigger guys, you gotta try something new. Told every team that I was on to use them, and they didn't listen. But oh boy, when I came back, they were all using it. But nowadays, it's still competitive. It can still be competitive, but without its abilities now, I feel like it's just good. But it is this is definitely the best good / competitive tank right now. Still, I'd rather play him over the FV. The grill, it's trash. I know it has its abilities to be able to have better aim and all that, but the OG grill, if anyone remembers that, that tank was disgusting. And then they nerfed it, and then they buffed it in areas that it shouldn't have been buffed that didn't help it at all. Wargaming, just bring back the good old grill, and then we can have fun with this tank again. The Jagdpanzer, I've never really cared for the Jagdpanzer E100. With tungsten, though, it does make it pretty good. Back then, it was kind of just there for me, but now I feel like it is a very good tank and fun to play at times. But personally, I just don't like playing the Jagdpanzer E100 on my own personal side. But when I do play it, it is a very decent tank. The Object 263. I don't know why people struggle with this tank. I haven't struggled with it. It is a very good armored vehicle that has high DPM. It gets around, but I think it's just because of how weirdly angled it is that it gets taken advantage of, and a lot of people put it down here to here, but really it is a very good competitive tank if played correctly. Otherwise, it'd be dropping down into the good section just because it evens out from the really good players and the trash players. The 268, I'm going to be putting it in the good section because I feel like it can be trash at times where RNG says screw you, and then it feels like it's overpowered at times. So it's definitely been in the game for a long time and has seen its ups and downs. The 268 version 4, when it first came out, I'd say it was more competitive. Now it's just kind of mellowed out because everyone now knows how to deal with it, and so it's good, but the gun is better up close, and so honestly, I'm going to put it in the okay section. I would rather play the regular 268 and slap people from a sniping position and then move in later on. The E3, this tank is, ooh, with its abilities, I'm going to say it's a good tank. Overall, it's another tank that I just don't play very often. I'm not much of a TD player at all. Like, I'd rather play the WZ over any of these, and I'd rather play the Minotauro over any of these tanks. But the E3, it's a good tank. It goes here and here. The E4, my goodness, it used to be right here when they had no heat rounds, and it's premium rounds for APCR. That was a disgusting update. An absolutely disgusting update where you saw up to 3 E4s at times. And now it's kind of just dropped back down, but I still think it can be competitive, but it's kind of there. I definitely would say in a competitive scene, if a tank destroyer is going to be used, the Minotauro is going to be used a bit more than all the others, unless if you can get a spot where you're going to boost a Grill 15. But if you do see a Grill 15 and you're on the enemy team, you're going to start blind shooting those spots anyways. And the last tank for the entire thing here is the 66F. Oof. It's here. It's there. It's like a tank that wants to be the E4 and wants to be the E5 heavy. That's what it is. It wants to be those rules, and it can do those rules if you know what you're doing. Personally, I do love its gun, but its armor profile is just so whack. It makes way too many weird angles, and it's very easy to take out if you're a decent player, even an okay player. You can just figure it out and just HE the engine deck that's very exposed. So yeah, guys, that is my tier list of all the tier 10 vehicles from light, medium, heavy, and tank destroyer. Hopefully you have an idea of kind of like what I think about tier 10 vehicles in general. Now, if I just went into straight tier 10, yeah, tier 10 overall is just a joke in the game. But take a screenshot and maybe try out some of those vehicles that I listed as what they were for me. Anyways, GG's, take care, enjoy, and if you want to see a video like this again for Tier 8 or something else, let me know. Let's have a good day. See you later.